On today's show, happy freaking New Year, the first episode of 2025. And how are we celebrating? By recapping 2024, because why not, I guess, since I didn't do it in 2024 in time. Counting down my top 10 moments of the 2024 season and all things Padre land. It's going to be a fun one, a nice celebrating one to start off the year strong. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Thursday, January 2nd, as always and forever. Even in the new year, I am your host with sometimes occasionally, but certainly not always the most, Javier Reyes. You can follow me on Twitter /X and Blue Sky at Javipeno, JAVIIPENO, or go check out my other baseball related work over at Just Baseball and subscribe to the newsletter to get all of your info for when all these, off-season free agency transactions take place. Go check that out. Also, go check out Gametime. Today's episode is brought to you by them. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. And folks, we're here. And you might be wondering, Javi, what, aren't you supposed to do the year-end recap, before the year ends? Well, you know what? I didn't. Okay, what do you want from me? And Javi, it's January 2nd. What's wrong with you, man? Not gonna lie, I was just really, really tired, and I just could not record yesterday. I mean, I could have, but I was just really, really tired, and I figured, you know what? Everybody, doing it first day of the year is too mainstream, right? Everyone wants to do their New Year's resolutions. I see people running around as I'm getting on my train back home. It's like, enough. Save it for January 2nd. You know what I'm saying? But no, in all seriousness, guys, going to be talking about my top 10 favorite moments of the year. We will return to your regularly scheduled programming tomorrow in terms of the current happenings, I think, with the Padres. But unfortunately, it is the offseason, and therefore, as everybody knows in baseball, things get a little bit slow sometimes. But I'm really happy about this list. I just think it'll be fun to just talk about this year. And even though it didn't end the way the Padres would have liked, the way that anyone would have liked, especially given how special this season was in a lot of ways, I think that what's so interesting about this baseball season is it really made me question, is it really, sometimes I wonder, is it a mistake for us to just attach everything to winning the World Series or winning the big game at the end? And I'm not saying this as someone who's like, oh, I'm trying to devalue it because we lost. No, I'm not saying that. There's so much good that this year gave us that I think it's really important to remember how fun throughout the whole year the Padres were and how joyous they were throughout the season. I really, really, really do believe that. And I think it's okay to sometimes view sports in a guise that's not just did you win or lose. You know what I'm saying? I think that that's really important to do that sometimes. And Lord knows it's really important to do that when you're a fan of really, really bad teams. If you're the Rockies of the world right now or the A's, stuff like that. So really excited to talk about this. And also, you should listen to the rest of the episode, but feel free to leave your comments or message me on Twitter. Any honorable mentions you think I left off of this list. And it can be anything. It could be minor things. It could be, oh, I liked when Don Orsillo went on a rant about something. Whatever you want, leave it in the comments. I'd love to read that. We'll talk about those tomorrow. But let us begin, everybody, with the countdown, starting with number 10, my 10th favorite moments of the 2024 Padres season. It is Michael King's strikeout performance at Petco against the Dodgers. Now you might be wondering, what, didn't he get killed by the Dodgers? That's right. That's why it's number 10. Okay. This is the first big time start that Michael King had for the Padres. And for me, it meant a lot because at this time, remember that the Padres starting pitching was really carried by Dylan Cease to start out the year, right? I think that that's one thing that gets forgotten a little bit is that, yes, Dylan Cease ended up struggling at the end. He had some up and down months and whatnot, but without him, I don't really know where this Padres team finishes. Because those beginning months were really, really tough for the team. On top of the fact that the bullpen, it did start out strong, Yuki Matsui, but then, and Robert Suarez, and Suarez ended up keeping it going for the most part. Yuki Matsui has up and downs. He was good, but it was Enel De Los Santos, Wandy Peralta, some guys that end up not being part of the team. So the bullpen starts imploding. And early on, Joe Musgrove's a mess, right? You got to remember that. Darvish gets hurt. And then you have Dylan Cease. And then you have Michael King, who at this point was clearly just figuring things out, right? He's not throwing it nearly as hard, which worried me a little bit at the time at the beginning of the season, just because I just worry with his type of pitch mix. I worried about that a little bit, but it was okay. I didn't realize how strong his other pitches would be, that the dip in velocity would be okay. And that's what ended up happening, right? Is that Michael King needed some time to figure things out. But at the beginning of the season, the Padres were giving up more home runs to batters than everybody, and Michael King was one of those, where he looked really sharp at times, but he would really struggle, I think, throughout. And then what happened was the start against the Dodgers, especially like on a Friday night, May 10th, it wasn't his only good start, right? He had a good start against San Francisco. He had a really good start against the Brewers, but the Brewers, that doesn't hit the same, man. That Dodgers start, he goes 7 innings, only gives up 2 hits, 3 walks, no earned runs, and 11 strikeouts. It was one of the better performances we'd seen at home by a Padre in a long time, and he was just super, super dominant. And don't get me wrong, what's funny is that right after this, he then proceeds to get lit up by the Rockies for 6 runs, which is why, like, at the very beginning of the year, we just didn't know what we were getting from Michael King. And basically, once you get to May 27th, throughout the rest of the year, he's basically just nails, right? He was awesome for the rest of the year, as we all know, but this was the coming out party, basically, to sum it up, for Michael King, and it was against the rival, obviously, and it was just really, really dominant, and it was a little bit unexpected, considering not just how up and down he'd been, but, you know, the start before that, you're like, all right, it's the D-backs. It just doesn't hit the same, man. And for him to have that start on a Friday night was just huge for this team, especially when we knew at that time. We didn't know what was going on with Michael King. We didn't know what was going on with the rotation, the bullpen. We really need someone to emerge. And this was kind of the first tease of what was yet to come. He didn't solidify him just yet. Like I said, he had that Rockies start, but he really, really did have a great season after this start for the most part. He just started to slowly figure things out. And it was great, and we love him very much. So that's number 10. Number 9, we got to get through these somewhat quickly because I'm realizing we're already 6-7 minutes into this podcast. My Lord. Number 9, and a lot of people are going to be surprised by where I rank this, but it is Manny Machado becoming the Padres' all-time home run leader. I know what you're saying. How he's literally making history. He's becoming one of the best Padres ever. I understand that, but it was expected. Everybody knew that eventually he was going to surpass this, right? Either him or Tatis, and Tatis will eventually surpass this too. I don't know. It just didn't. It's Padres' all-time home run leader. And I'm not trying to be mean. I get that it's a Padres podcast, but it's not as insane as other teams, and most importantly, as other players. It was Nate Colbert, who most people don't even realize was the Padres' all-time home run leader with 163 home runs. Like, that's crazy. And now Manny Machado has 167. He becomes the number 1 all-time. But it was still like, I don't know. I just feel like that's a great Padres accomplishment, don't get me wrong. But it's also like, you know, Adrian Gonzalez, Phil Nevin, Dave Winfield, Tony Gwynn. Those are the guys behind it. This is unfortunately not a franchise rich with super all-time home run leaders, so it was expected. And I do also kind of wonder, like, it was against, by the way, it was against Seattle off of George Kirby. Nice little sprinkling of coolness because George Kirby's a very good pitcher. But I do kind of wonder if, like, Nate Colbert's out there somewhere. You know what I mean? He's just like, wow, I'm the leader still? You know what I'm saying? Like, he's just like, wow, what's going on? I know he passed. I'm saying, like, he actually passed last year, by the way, in January. But I'm saying, like, I wonder if he was there somewhere, like, dang, like, I had no idea I would keep this all that long. You know what I mean? Most people don't even know it's Nate Colbert. So RIP to him, but also in general, shouts to Manny Machado, one of the greats. And even when it gets frustrating at times, he's still always been there for the team and has low-key been one of those players that has really aged pretty well in all considerations. When we're in a league of all these players that they get these big contracts and everybody's worried, like, oh my God, you know what I'm saying? Like, we're on year 3 of the contract. It's not aging well. And this happens a lot in baseball. He's been great. You know what I'm saying? And I understand he has a new contract now, so we'll see how he ages on that one. But for the most part, this was a player that basically came through every year for the Padres, even down seasons, like that first year in 2019. He still hit like 35 home runs, right? Like, he was always just there and a really solid player no matter what. So got to give credit to Manny Machado. What an absolute beast. Next moment, though. Next moment. And I know. I don't like bunching up the same players together, but I had to. You know, that's just how I ranked it. Michael King's first playoff start. We talked about this with Ben Lloyd a couple weeks ago. Actually asked him his favorite moment of the year. And one of the things he brought up, maybe it's recency bias, but it was his first playoff start at Petco Park against the Atlanta Braves. 7 innings, only 5 hits, no earned runs, no walks, and 12 strikeouts. Look, these things can go either way. We've seen great pitchers who their first playoff start, they struggle. I remember Luis Severino being a good example. That dude was like a top 5 Cy Young guy, gets to the playoffs, gets absolutely shafted by Minnesota, right? Gets absolutely killed. And we know about all-time great pitchers, like your Clayton Kershaws, like your, let's say I got a better example, not to just do Dodger hating, Max Fried, right? That's a player who's been really, really bad in the postseason and wasn't very good his first start. Like, it happens a lot. So it's not a guarantee, even if everything about the player's stats, the player's repertoire, just the way that they pitch, the team they're facing, even in Atlanta, who I know that they weren't having a very good year, but it's still a team that has, Matt Olson and all these guys, right? They still have, I think Ozzie Albies was still there at the time. You still have Michael Harris. You still have Marcell Ozuna. It's still a team you worry about. Like, it's not inconceivable that they just wake up in the playoffs, right? These are very talented players. Michael King goes out, delivers an absolute gem of a performance, and I agree with my guy Ben Lloyd. Go back and listen to the podcast that I did with him. Last segment we talked about favorite moments. Just incredible. Love Michael King, and it was the moment where I think it also became a little bit more mainstream, that you would see some outlets and some reporters talking about, like, hey, Padres got this guy from the Juan Soto trade. Like, that, you got to give them credit. Like, they got a winner. Like, they really made off pretty well in that deal. And especially fast forward with how much he ended up getting paid, Juan Soto, I mean, that you're like, yeah, they really made a good trade, because there was no way in heck that anyone was affording that, with the exception of, I think the Dodgers, if they didn't have Ohtani, maybe they would have gone for that. And then the Yankees, right? Like, that's basically it, right? For the most part. But really fun time. Love it very much. But we are not done. Of course we're not done, ladies and gentlemen. That was only number 8. We still got a bunch to go through. But first, I got to talk to you about one of our sponsors of today's podcast, and that is the legendary, you heard them at the top of the pod, that is Gametime, ladies and gentlemen. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. One of my favorite memories was attending actually a concert last year. It was great. It was the Gypsy Kings. It was really fun. I enjoyed it very much. The energy and excitement was unforgettable. And now Gametime, it makes it even easier. Those lovely folks over at Gametime to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Gametime Picks. This feature filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats. That's right. Only incredible deals on great seats. So you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. It's really great. It's really great. They have all these different deals all the time, and I just love the way that they make it easier for you in your ticket buying experience, depending on, maybe you don't know exactly what's going to be available. It just makes it easier for you. They've got a super deal too. It's very impressive, offering great seats at unbeatable prices. No surprise fees at checkout either, man. Let me tell you, they're great. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today, because what time is it? It is Gametime. And just like that, everybody, we are rolling. We are thriving and vibing into segment number 2 of the Locked On Padres podcast, your team every day. Feel free to go check me out on Twitter at Javapeno I messed that up. Javapeno on Twitter /X or Blue Sky. Go check that out. We'll be posting a lot more, because it is the new year and a new slate to try and give you guys all the best content that I possibly can. And I appreciate the support always. Let's get into it. Let's keep going. Number 7 on my top 10 list. So far we've had Michael King's strikeout performance against the Dodgers. We've had Manny Machado's home run lead. And then we had Michael King's first playoff start. Number 7, this one was a little bit hard to rank for me, because in the moment, and I think that it's not tainted, but it's because we know now that from that moment onwards that he would have some good moments. Don't get me wrong. He would be a solid player, certainly a player that could be on a, contending team, but did not end up being as monstrous and amazing as he had been in previous years, and also showing you a little bit of frustration with him sometimes. But forget all that for a second. It is Luis Arraez's walk-off hit in his first home game and against the Dodgers. Come on. You know what I mean? Like, come on. This was just Friday night, I'm pretty sure, too. Yeah, because it was the City Connects that they were rocking against the Dodgers, and it was awesome. I mean, they had just traded for him, and his first game, I believe, was actually like a 4-hit game. if I'm not mistaken. I think it was like a 4-hit game, one of his first games. It was just electric. And for him to have the walk-off there, it was great. Everybody comes running out. And it wouldn't be the only walk-off hit, right? Like, it wouldn't be the only one that we would see happen for the Padres this season. I think that one of the things about Arise was just like, in that time, in that moment, to just be able to go up there, get that single. And not only that, but just kind of, there's something always satisfying about seeing a trade acquisition work quickly. Because that doesn't always happen. It doesn't mean it's bad. It doesn't mean they will be bad. And if they start off great, it doesn't mean that they will be good, as evidenced by Arise, who, it is worth pointing out, was not all that incredible for the Padres this year, right? He actually had a little bit of a down year by his standards, and his standards aren't even that incredibly high, but in general, 1.1 wins above replacement, that's lower than last year at 3.3, lower than the year before that at 2.7, and lower than the year before that at 1.6. He had a 109 WRC plus, breaking his streak of 130 consecutively. He was a little bit down this year. He just wasn't walking as much as he would like. It was just a little bit rough, right? So he had his bad moments, wasn't as great defensively until the playoffs for some reason. But Arise, maybe he'll be better next year, right? We'll have to see how he does next year. But I will say, a little bit annoying, but at least in that moment, man, that walk-off, absolutely love to see it, especially at home in front of those lovely, lovely folks at Petco. But of course, we're not done there, guys. Speaking of moves materializing and the satisfaction of them and whatnot, for me, it isn't necessarily an individual start. It is number 6. It is Dylan Cease, the trade happening right before, like a day, or what was it, like 2 days before the team gets on a plane for the Seoul series. Just the thrill of it. Like the thrill of that. Remember that during this time, Dylan Cease had been dangled by the White Sox for a while now. He was a player that everybody knew they've got to trade this guy. And frankly, Luis Robert is another example. Garrett Crochet, another example too. And he just got traded to the Red Sox. Team's bad. They've got some guys with value. You got to move them. But in that moment, I don't think people were really talking about it. It kind of, what was so fascinating about the Dylan Cease trade to me was it was known. And then it was like, hey, by the way, yeah, they're thinking about trade. Oh, he's gone. Like, it kind of reignited and happened very quickly. And for AJ Preller to have done that right before the team went to Seoul is even more nuts. And he made the trip with them, Dylan Cease. That way, just get the team bonding and whatnot. But I think the hastiness of it to address that need, because a lot of people were wondering, like, you've got Musgrove, you've got Darvish, and then you've got King. You still had some questions. You wanted to have a little bit of a certainty there. And they bring him in, they make the trade. And of course, what was so great, by the way, is that this is coming off of the Juan Soto trade. So they send Drew Thorpe, along with a couple other pieces, to the White Sox in order to make this trade happen. And it was just thrilling. I believe it happened on like a Friday night too. I don't know. Did it happen on Friday night? I feel like it did. A lot of things happen on Friday nights. Maybe that's why I have like such a warm feeling talking about this Padres team. But that was amazing. There's just something so thrilling about a trade, getting that notification from Jeff Passan. I've been waiting for the Jeff Passan notifications all offseason here to see if the Padres are able to do something, or even if it's not a blockbuster move, just do something. Just amazing stuff. So that trade, it's not my favorite trade moment that the Padres have had. I think that my favorite, now let me tell you, Max Scherzer, when that almost happened, when I thought that was happening, that sent a lightning bolt through me. But it's obviously Juan Soto. Like, I literally was on a meeting for work, and I was just like, not gonna lie, like barely able to keep my excitement just seeing that notification pop up. It was nuts. But Dylan Cease trade, it's right behind there, and it was so needed. And as we talked about with Michael King in the first segment, sorely needed, especially at the beginning, to keep this rotation, kind of have an anchor who could carry it a bit, especially at the beginning. So shout out Dylan Cease, shout out AJ Preller. What a moment that was. Next moment, number 5 on my list, Jurickson Profar's Will Smith game. I debated putting this higher. I did. I debated putting this higher than number 4, which we'll get to, obviously. But Jurickson Profar, if I could just choose a thing about 2024, it is either Jurickson Profar or Jackson Merrill. Like, just what I think are the takeaways from this year. Now, down the road, I think people will be like, hey, remember that first, like, we knew Jackson Merrill was a superstar? Yes, I understand that. But just in a vacuum, like, those are the two stories, were Jurickson Profar and Jackson Merrill. I just think that with Jurickson Profar, I had so much fun with this. I know it's not the most impactful thing that happened, right? Dylan Cease was more impactful, obviously. The what's it called? The Michael King trade, obviously, was more impactful. The certain walk-offs against teams, the Michael King start, right? I understand that. But for me, it was the fact that out of nowhere, Will Smith just kind of took a shot at Jurickson Profar. Now, let me tell you, I understand a little bit of Will Smith being like, all right, you don't have to be so melodramatic. Jurickson Profar, a little bit on the plate sometimes, and he gets brushed back. I will tell you, he was hit by 17 pitches this year, which by far led Major League Baseball. So, clearly teams don't like Jurickson Profar for some reason. I'm not really totally sure, but they consider him irritant. And of course, they beat them or whatever it was. And then, Profar, he thinks he's getting hit. And then Will Smith makes the comment. He's like, I don't know why he took it so seriously. Like, we weren't trying to hit him. Like, he's kind of irrelevant. And that became the thing. And Jurickson Profar's name, like his nickname, is almost Mr. Irrelevant now, right? I don't know if it's like been made official on like the Baseball Reference page. I'm actually going to check that right now. But after that, for then the follow-up game on ESPN, see what I mean? Like, I almost put this one higher. For it to be on ESPN, bases loaded, the big bases clearing double coming from Jurickson Profar, and everyone being like, who's irrelevant now, all that stuff. And I really do think, and by the way, Will Smith ended up apologizing and rescinding this, probably because he kept getting crap from Padres fans every 3 seconds, but it really was an out of nowhere shot. Like, unless, like, I just don't understand this hatred that people have for Jurickson Profar. It was so out of nowhere. Bottom line is he's an MLB peer, right? Obviously, you've had a better career than him, and I know that the Dodgers fans like bringing that up, but that's not what's the point here. It's just like, that's kind of a messed up thing to say publicly to the media about another player. You know what I mean? Now, don't get me wrong. It's fun as fans for us to watch the beefs and all that, but it was really out of left field and just kind of, no pun intended, because that's his position, but it was just really uncalled for, and it was wrong. And it's not the most sinister thing that anyone's ever done, believe me, in baseball, clearly, but it was just kind of whack, you know what I mean? It was just like, why'd you say that? And for him to get his revenge, and yes, some people have pointed out that ESPN broadcast felt very partial, where like they're like, and a double from Profar, and that's going to bring in the runs. Like, just not knowing the moment and not caring. Like, this was such a crazy story, in a very niche crazy story, where it was like, give some excitement, be like, wow, that's the guy that they called irrelevant, and he came back up and hit that big hit. Yeah, I did feel a little bit of the big market bias there, I'm not gonna lie. I understand people's complaints there, but overall, who cares? One of my favorite moments of the year. It was incredible, and believe me, Jurickson Profar finds his way back onto this list. But you'll have to wait and see how he gets back onto this list in just a minute, guys, because we got to take a second to talk about another one of our sponsors, and that is our good friends over at FanDuel. Yep, they've been a sponsor for this podcast for a long time, and let me tell you, so long, in fact, that the playoffs for the NFL are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Maybe you want to do something on Vikings, Lions this weekend. Who's going to get the 1 seed in the NFC? Go check that out, guys. They have so many ways for you to pick up a W, not just in who's going to win, but how many points each team will score, the point spreads, the over-unders on yards, touchdowns, first touchdown, all sort of stuff. They've got you covered. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And just like that, everybody, we are thriving and vibing into the final segment, the final four, folks, of my top 10 list for Padres moments of the 2024 season. A lot of fun. Let's keep it going. We just talked about Profar's Will Smith game. Number 4 on my list, Dylan Cease's no-hitter against the Nationals. Amazing, right? And I know, crazy that I'm only putting this at number 4, but this is my list, man, and you're not part of it. You know what I'm saying, man? All right, this is what we do out here, okay? My opinion, Dylan Cease's no-hitter, it was amazing. Obviously, it was amazing. He had a few walks in the game, but who cares? And it's not the best team in the world, but who cares? Second no-hitter in Padres history. This obviously would have ranked higher if it was the first no-hitter in Padres history. The same way back in 2021, I ranked Joe Musgrove's no-hitter, I believe, as the best moment of the season. It was incredible. And it was also incredible that, all right, insider, a little bit of a tangent, but back in the day, we did this like kind of program where I was talking live like to fans and you could join into my chat rooms and whatnot. And for one of those games I had been doing it for was the Musgrove no-hitter. Just really, really crazy. And I was actually doing it with the guy who hosts the Rangers show, Bryce Patrick of Locked On Rangers. Go check out that pod if you're a Rangers fan, if you want to see AJ Preller's old stomping grounds. But Dylan Cease's no-hitter, the reason that it is great is on top of it being against the Nationals, who were weirdly like the bitter like enemy of the Padres this year. Obviously it's the Dodgers, but like this season enemy was the Nationals. That felt really good. And I think there's a lot of poeticism in the fact that Luis Arraez was the person who took away, and he's on the team at the time that this happens, the Dylan Cease no-hitter. When Dylan Cease was only an out away back with the White Sox, Luis Arraez, when he was on the Twins, is actually the one who broke it up. And instead, it was really like, it's just kind of poetic brilliance, right? This is what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying about it being more than just winning World Series sometimes. Moments like this, like, that's crazy for that to have happened. This Padres season was amazing. And for Luis Arraez to be on the team, and he's, congratulating him, because, Dylan Cease is probably like, I hate that. You know what I mean? Like, he's like, I hate that dude. You know what I mean? In a competitive, fun way. Like, I hate that dude. And instead, he gets in there, delivers the no-hitter. Just an incredible season for Cease. And I really do think that there was so much that happened this year, from Merrill to Profar to Tatis, being almost back to his full self, to the trades, to the dirt trade deadline with all the bullpen stuff, with Michael King, and with even Jay Cronenworth having a pretty good season, right? Like, so much stuff happened this year. Manny Machado breaking the all-time Padres home record. That it's amazing that these moments aren't all number one. A lot of the things that I've mentioned could have been number one, and I think that that's pretty nuts, right? So amazing, amazing season, and amazing moment for Dylan Cease. Number 3 on my top 10 list is the 8-0 comeback against the Chicago Cubs early on in the season. And there's a few reasons for this. First of all, starts in the bottom of the 6th, right? 8-0, really, really bad day. Pedro Avila getting absolutely lit up. Just bad day for the Padres, right? And the problem is that at this time, we were like, is this just a repeat of last year? They're not driving runners in scoring position. They've been a little bit better at that, but is this going to be a repeat of last year? At the time, I was like, it can't be, guys. Like, there's no way they're going to have 2 consecutive seasons being that unclutch. And for you to have had this moment this early, it was incredibly fortuitous of how many times the Padres would have moments like this, where they would have comeback wins, they'd have walk-off wins, they'd win the one-run games, just a complete role reversal, and they had never done anything remotely even closest. Even if the Padres didn't win this game, the comeback still would have been better than anything they had in 2023, which is was a miserable, miserable season. And don't get me wrong, there were some bad moments. I think that they were close to another comeback win. The Manny Machado first pitch ground out, we all got mad, that type of stuff. But in this game, the fact that everyone got in on it, Cronenworth hit a 2-run bomb. This is back when he was really, really on fire. Manny Machado gets a single after that. Then Profar brings him to third. Then Kim hits a triple to bring in Machado and Profar. Machado and Profar. And I love, like, a subtle feature when you go look up the highlights, like Don Orsillo's tone. He's like, and it's 8-4 now. Like, he's so good at seizing the moment and capturing how everybody's feeling. It's like, we're not necessarily going to win, but like, hey, it's 8-4 now. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of crazy, like, how much of a comeback we're making. And then after that, Campizano, the Campy Hive, RIP, or might be back based on how little moves they've made. He hits a sacrifice ground out. Merrill gets a blooper, and then Bogarts, right? He gets in on the action, hits the home run, and then bottom 8, of course, the Tatis home run that gives them the lead. Everybody loses it. He loses it. It was awesome. You never got anything like that in 2023. That's why it ranks high. Should it be lower based on importance than the no-hitter, than the Cease trade, than the maybe even Ariza's walk-off in the first game? Maybe. But for me, it's just that in that moment in time, it was just so huge for the Padres, and I think for them to just see and have a moment that they had not had at all in 2023. And frankly, barely even in 2022 either. So that was just huge. Love it very much. It was the beginning of a very good season. Number 2 on my all-time list is just crazy. Like, again, this is the type of stuff that shows you like a really magical season. It's unfortunate again how it didn't end the way that they would have liked. But and this wasn't it's not like it was unknown if they would make it into the playoffs. Like everything was pretty certain, but there's just something amazing, right? And no team, I'm pretty sure, has ever done this. The game clinching and playoff clinching triple play against the Dodgers. Are you kidding me? It's ridiculous. Ridiculous for that to happen. Frankly, you could argue that this is number one because I just have never seen this happen before. It's one thing to win a game on a triple play. The Yankees had actually done it, I believe, a couple of years ago. They did it, I'm going to say in 2021. They had done this. I believe it was against the A's. They clinched the game on a triple play, which is incredible. I'm not trying to take away from them. But for you to not only clinch, right, the game, not only to win the game on a triple play, not only for it to be against the Dodgers, but for it to be the game that officially sends you to the playoffs, that's like Hollywood type stuff. When you get into it, that's Hollywood right there. Genuinely amazing, amazing stuff. One of my favorite moments of the year. I couldn't believe it. I even had friends text me who weren't following baseball. They're like, "Wait, you guys clinched on a triple play?" They were just like, "What?" My one Padres fan, he was like, "You got to be kidding me! This is amazing." Some other people who cover other teams were reaching out to me like, "How are you feeling right now?" I was like, "That was." I genuinely have no words. Like, I can't believe that just happened. In the moment of it, really, really great stuff. The Padres knew it. They were amped. Amazing, amazing stuff. It's amazing how much stuff on this list came against the Dodgers. Somewhat intentionally, somewhat not. Amazing stuff. But you're probably wondering, if it's not that, then what's number one for you, Javi? Well, number one for me, it is the just... I know this is dumb. I know it's dumb, and people are going to disagree, but the Washington Nationals saga is my number one moment, specifically against Jurickson Profar. I'm counting 2 games for this. I know that sounds unfair, but I'm cheating because this is my podcast. It starts with the Luis Arraez game, right, against the Nationals, in which they walk him. They walk him with the game on the line to face Jurickson Profar. He gets the walk-off hit, and remember, it just adds on to a magical season that Jurickson Profar is having. So for him to do that, that's what I think was so fun about it, was just like, I cannot believe how good this guy's been in high leverage situations this year. I cannot believe how good he's been in general this year. He gets the hit, a walk-off double. That at first I was like, oh no, he didn't smack it. You know what I mean? I didn't know if it was going to clear or not, but it was a long at-bat, and he came through. And looking back, it is kind of weird. Like, why did you want to face Profar? Like, this guy at all times, even when he wasn't as good this year, always puts up a good bat. He knows how to see a bunch of pitches. He knows how to draw walks. And for you to walk him for Luis Arraez, who had been struggling, and I think he was 1 for 5 in that game. And I understand that Arraez at his best is like the worst player to face when you know that a team is just needing of a hit, because that's what he does. He just gets hits. But I was just surprised by that walk. So Profar comes in, clearly chip on his shoulder, hits the walk-off, and then he's yelling at the crowd, looks a little bit towards the Nationals dugout, which we'll get to in a second. But he's pumping himself up. It was amazing, and it was just like a kind of like an amalgamation of everything that's maybe not the right word, but just just everything coming to what's the word for when everything combines? And I don't know. I'm blanking right now, but it was so incredible. And then for you to have, obviously, the next day, which is part of the moment, where they throw at Profar, right? Or I think what first happens is, what's his name? Kybert Ruiz, who's a little punk, you know what I mean? The worst qualified catcher in all of baseball is stepping up to Profar and touching him multiple times. And you can see on the replay, go look up John Boy's breakdown over on YouTube. The breakdown of like Profar was like, you can see no touch. You know, some people are like that. Remember Adrian Beltre, right? Adrian Beltre did not like the head stuff in general. Some people are like that. It's totally fine. But Max Scherzer, when he's in the middle of a game, don't talk to him, nothing, right? But you have Kybert Ruiz step to him, and everyone's like, what the heck is going on here? Manny Machado actually instigates it a little more. Like, he really brushly gets in the middle of it and is like, leave him alone, all that type of stuff. And it was a lot. Like, I get it, but it's so ridiculous for them to be offended that even if he did celebrate towards the bench, this is the only sport where that's considered like a high order crime if you flex a little bit to your opponent, right? Like, it's insane that that's a thing. Insane. That's actually freaking insane. That like flexing and celebrating against teams. Look, you can do the debate of whether or not you just want to be low key, don't bring more attention to yourself, that's fine. But this idea that doing that is bad is ridiculous. And, we can get into the whole, we don't have to actually. Go look up my episode. The Dodger fans got mad when I talked about how ridiculous it was that they threw beer at Tatis and Profar, because he taunted the fans as if fans aren't doing the same thing all the time. That's just kind of how sports work, right? There's always a little bit of a thing, right? That's fine. That's what fans do, but it's just ridiculous acting like they were innocent. He taunted the fans. Okay, why are you acting like he went to preschool and like took every kid's lunch? You know what I mean? What are we doing? These aren't innocent little angels. But with that moment, he celebrates. Manny gets in between it. And then for Mackenzie Gore to hit him then, immediately after, which I don't know if it was intentional, but everyone, of course, is rightfully like, what the heck? The Padres are like, how is this guy not getting thrown out of the game? This is insane. Like, how could you do that on your first pitch? I actually don't think he meant it, right? I don't know. I just think that he's a little bit of an out-of-control pitcher, a little bit of a wild horse sometimes. But he does. That's the bottom line. And what happens? Manny Machado hits an absolute nuke, walks, you know what I mean? Like, he eyeballs it forever. This whole exchange was amazing. He looks at it forever, right? And then for later, for Jurickson Profar to then hit a grand slam, and this time he doesn't admire it. He's just like smiling. He's like, this. I think even he was like, wow, like like they must be pretty embarrassed right now. That whole sequence of events, and then of course for the no-hitter to then happen later, the next time they face them. But I'm not going to capture all of that into one moment, but it's the 2-day moment, the Profar walk-off, then followed by the Keibert Ruiz ridiculousness, Manny hitting a home run, and then Jurickson Profar hitting a grand slam. Whichever order you want, you could choose just the Profar walk-off, you could choose just the grand slam, the Manny hit, whichever individual if you want to count it that way, but I'm putting it all together in one. That is my favorite moment of the 2024 Padres season. And folks, that's it. That's my list. Let's run through it one more time before we close out this really fun and chunky boy episode. Number 10, Michael King's strikeout performance against the Dodgers early on in the season. Number 9, Manny Machado becoming the Padres' all-time home run leader, surpassing Nate Colbert. Number 8, Michael King's first playoff start against the Braves, where he was just absolutely dynamite. Number 7, Luis Arraez's walk-off hit in his first home game for the Padres against the Dodgers. Number 6, the Dylan Cease trade happening right before the Seoul series. Just that night of the trade happening was amazing. Number 5, Jurickson Profar's game, getting his revenge against Will Smith after the irrelevant comment. Number 4, Dylan Cease's no-hit performance and the poeticism of the previous guy who spoiled his no-hitter, Luis Arraez, now being teammates. Number 3, the 8-0 comeback against the Cubs and what that meant for a team that didn't have any moment of fun at all in 23 and barely anything like that in 22 with the exception of the playoffs. Like, just an amazing moment to be like, yeah, this team's different than last year. Number 2, the triple play to not just beat the Dodgers, not just win the game, but also to be the official game that clinches the postseason berth. Amazing stuff. And then number 1, what we just talked about, that entire national saga after the Profar walk-off. That is my list. And there's a lot more moments, and I'd love for you guys to leave your own in the comments or DM me on Twitter. We're actually going to read some of them, if I get any of them, for tomorrow's episode if you guys want to talk about that. If you want to talk about some specific Jackson Merrill moments, maybe the walk-off Mason Miller. If you want to talk about specifically the Dylan Cease trade, you want to talk about why you think that should have been on the top 10 list, going back-to-back against certain teams, whatever it is, feel free to reach out. I'd love to hear from you guys. I'd love to read them on tomorrow's show. This is a rare opportunity. We don't usually do listener input on non-mailbags, you know what I'm saying? So go check that out, guys. Once in a lifetime offer. But with that all being said, everybody, thank you for tuning in to the Locked On Padres podcast, the only pod that may be better than the Padres themselves. We've got a lot of fun content coming up. We've still got a lot of answers, or a lot of questions, I should say, for the Padres offseason. We're going to talk about that tomorrow and some of the deals and the minor deals, some players that need to be traded or could be traded on the Padres, who to target, all that sort of stuff. Should be a fun one for Friday. But until that next time, stay safe and, of course, stay faithful. My faithful homies, take care.